At my baby shower, my brother suddenly stood up and proudly declared that he'd been accepted into Stanford. From that moment forward, the attention shifted completely. My celebration quietly dissolved into his victory party. While I knelt down, scraping frosting off the tile, the entire room was already buzzing about his future. I didn't say anything, but the very next morning, my mom found something left behind on the kitchen table and her voice erupted into screams. They always say a baby shower should be a cheerful, tender gathering. Soft pastels draped across the room, gentle laughter floating in the air, and relatives gushing over tiny booties and newborn-sized clothes. That was the vision I carried with me during the 2 weeks I spent planning every detail. It wasn't some over-the-top event, just a warm, meaningful afternoon that felt personal. I paid for the food myself. I ordered the cake, picked the decorations, and scrubbed the entire living room to chase away the lingering smell of greasy takeout and my dad's constant cigars. I even made a playlist, quiet acoustic songs, the kind I imagined would one day lull my daughter to sleep. At 8 months pregnant, I climbed onto a stool and strung paper garlands across the windows because no one had volunteered to help me. And I did all of this with the hope that, just this once, maybe my family would truly be happy for me. At first, I thought they might be. A few relatives trickled in, carrying wrapped gifts. My aunt handed me a stack of children's books. My cousin gave me a stuffed fox, saying it reminded her of the one I used to cling to when I was little. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe maybe this day really would turn out okay. But then my parents walked to the front of the room. My mom tapped her wine glass with a fork, cleared her throat, and smiled with the kind of look that suggested she was about to announce her own pregnancy. My dad's arm slipped around her shoulder as he beamed proudly. And there was Roger, just off to the side, shifting nervously, grinning like he couldn't contain it anymore. Just before we were about to cut the cake, my mom spoke in that syrupy sweet voice I knew all too well. "We just have a little surprise to share," she said. And I knew instantly, this day wasn't going to be mine anymore. Roger stepped forward, holding up an envelope like it was a sacred relic. "I got in," he announced, glowing. "Stanford, full acceptance." The room burst into applause. A cheer broke out from the back. My aunt, who had only minutes earlier told me how much she was looking forward to meeting my baby, rushed to throw her arms around him as though she had just hit the jackpot. And in that single instant, the entire atmosphere flipped. It felt as if someone had uncorked a bottle labeled "Better News," and the whole room was desperate to drink it in. My baby shower had transformed into a college acceptance celebration in less time than it takes to light a candle. No one needed to say it aloud. It was already clear. The change wasn't just in conversation, it was physical. Chairs scraped across the floor, dragging into new circles around Roger. The carefully arranged snack table I had put together turned into a station for his congratulations. The cake I had chosen so thoughtfully, it sat untouched, forgotten, just like the very reason we had gathered at all. And then, one after another, his friends started piling in. Not mine, his. A wave of teenagers, backpacks still hanging off their shoulders, poured through the doorway like they owned the place. One of them shouted, "Where's the party at?" Another came in carrying a speaker, already blasting music loud enough to shake the windows. The quiet lullaby playlist I had carefully built, it vanished under thumping bass. I was still holding a cup of ginger tea someone had given me. Still wearing the soft pink sash that said Mom-to-be, the one my cousin had bought just for the occasion. No one noticed. They shifted the gifts off the main table to make room for alcohol and soda. My mom mentioned offhandedly that we'd cut the cake later, once things settled down. But then the cake got shoved aside. Someone plopped a 2-liter soda bottle next to it, which tipped and spilled fizzy syrup down the frosting. I picked up a napkin and started blotting it. The frosting had smeared onto the table. I got down on my knees to wipe it properly before it dried, and while I was kneeling, 8 months pregnant, wiping frosting off the floor like some afterthought maid, someone stepped over me to hug Roger. They didn't even say, "Excuse me." I stayed there for a few seconds, just crouched on the floor, hands sticky with icing, breathing in deep through my nose while they laughed and shouted over my head. I could hear Roger in the other room talking about campus visits and dorm preferences. My mom was bragging about the tutors they'd hired to help him reach his potential. The same mom who told me at 16 that college was a scam and I should just get a job at the supermarket. So I did. I worked shifts until my feet ached, then came home and packed shipping boxes for my tiny online shop. I figured things out on my own, and when my business started to grow, I didn't ask them for anything. I paid bills. I saved. I bought this house with money. They didn't even know I had, but somehow they still believed it was theirs. My mom once said I was lucky to be able to live at home during my pregnancy. She said it like she was doing me a favor, completely forgetting that I paid the mortgage, the utilities, and even part of Roger's tutoring last year. It all played in my head as I slowly stood up. Sticky napkins still in hand, I looked around the room. My decorations were crumpled. My baby name banner had been pushed aside to make space for a hand-drawn sign that said, "Congrats, Roger." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I walked to the kitchen, washed my hands, dried them on a dish towel, and I went to my room. I closed the door, sat on the bed, my back ached, my feet were swollen, but my head was clear down the hall. The music thumped like a pulse that didn't belong to me. I picked up my phone, opened a folder I'd been quietly building for weeks. I didn't argue, but I also didn't forget. I used to think things were equal when we were little, that we were just two kids in the same storm trying to stay dry under the same leaking roof. But when I look back now, really look, I can see the way the scales were always tipped. Even in the small things, when I was 6 and Roger was 4, he threw my favorite doll in the fireplace. I cried for an hour. My mom told me it was my fault for leaving it where he could reach it when I said that wasn't fair. She sent me to my room for talking back. Roger got dessert that night. I didn't. In 3rd grade, I won 2nd place in the spelling bee. I came home beaming, holding the ribbon like it was made of gold. My dad glanced at it and said, "Just 2nd, maybe next year." When Roger won a participation medal in a soccer tournament, they threw him a pizza party when I got a B on a math test. In 8th grade, my dad said, "Well, at least you're trying." When Roger got the same grade, a year later he got a tutor and a full lecture about unlocking his brilliance. I was expected to help around the house because I was more mature. I did dishes while Roger played video games. I cleaned while he got praised for remembering to take out the trash once a week. I was told to be patient, to be grateful, to set an example. The older I got, the more invisible I became. When I was 16 and said I wanted to go to college, my mom laughed. "College for what? So you can waste 4 years and come out in debt. Oh, honey, you're better off getting a job and saving up." So I did. I applied to everything. Grocery stores, retail, warehouses. I got hired at a discount clothing store and worked the floor during Black Friday, while Roger was still in middle school. By the time he was 16, he had a brand new laptop, 3 private tutors, and a college prep coach. My parents took out a small loan to cover it. They called it an investment. They never asked me if I needed help with anything. I remember once at 17, I got into a minor car accident on the way to work. I wasn't hurt, just shaken. I called my mom from the side of the road. She sighed and said, "You should have been more careful," then hung up. 2 years later, Roger dented his fender in a parking lot, and my dad left work early to go comfort him. He told everyone at dinner that night how grown-up Roger had been for calling him at 19. I started my online shop. It was small, just reselling clearance items and shipping them from my bedroom. I packed orders at night, sometimes falling asleep beside the printer. I never told anyone how many returns I had to eat, how often shipping delays made customers furious. I just kept going, and slowly it worked. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't flashy, but it was stable enough to quit my job, enough to build something real. When I bought the house, I didn't tell my parents right away. I just invited them over and handed them the keys. My mom cried. My dad patted Roger on the back and said, "Now your sister has a place where we can all be together." They moved in the next month. They never asked if they should contribute, never offered to split bills. They acted like I was doing what any daughter would do. I let it slide. I told myself it was temporary. I thought maybe if I gave enough, they'd finally see me. When I told them I was pregnant, I expected shock. Disappointment. Maybe what I got was worse. "Oh," my mom said, blinking. "Oh, I guess that's happening." My dad asked if the father was in the picture. I said no. They nodded. No. Follow-up. No congratulations. They told Roger at dinner the next night. He laughed and said, "Guess we'll have to baby-proof the Xbox." I'll have to, but only because it was easier than crying when I offered to hire someone part-time to take over some of my order fulfillment so I could rest during the last few months of pregnancy. My dad asked, "Are you sure you can afford that? What about Roger's application fees?" I wish I could say that was the moment I broke, but it wasn't. It was just another weight added to a pocket already dragging me down. Something shifted, though, quietly. I started digging, researching, asking the right questions, getting ready. Because if they weren't going to protect me, then I had no choice but to protect myself and my daughter. I didn't want her earliest memories to be of me cleaning up after people who treated me like a utility. I didn't want her to grow up thinking that love was something you earned through silence and constant sacrifice. So I kept smiling, kept saying yes, kept helping. Every time someone needed something, I'd reply, "Of course," even as I kept quietly planning. That baby shower had never really been about me, not in their eyes. To them, it was just another excuse to host, to gather, to flaunt their version of family. But it also became the last time I would allow them to take over like that. They just didn't know it yet. The house was silent, but not the peaceful kind. It was the sort of stillness that hangs heavy, like the split second before a scream, like a breath being held too long. I stood in the kitchen, pouring a mug of tea, the gentle hiss of the kettle the only sound surrounding me. The sun had barely started its rise outside, but inside, the counters were still sticky with spilled soda, and the sink was overflowing with dishes that weren't mine. I had arranged the notices deliberately, one placed in the center of the table, 3 more underneath, each one marked with their names in bold black ink. The baby inside me shifted as I eased into the chair, gently rubbing my lower back. My body was sore, but my thoughts were focused. I had been getting ready for this longer than they had any idea. At exactly 7:02 a.m., I heard the floorboards creak in the hallway, my mother's slippers dragging. She entered the kitchen with a tired grunt, and then froze in place when she spotted the table. I didn't glance up. I didn't have to. "What is this?" she asked, her voice still thick with sleep. I took a sip of my tea. She reached for the top page and began to read. It only took 5 seconds. Her eyes widened, her mouth fell open. "What the hell is this?" she snapped, her voice cutting through the morning stillness. Another pause, then she screamed, "Lily, what is this?" The mug in my hand stayed perfectly steady. I took another sip. My father stumbled into the room in his robe, squinting like he hadn't fully woken up. Roger came in right after, yawning and rubbing his eyes. "What's going on?" my dad asked groggily. "She's evicting us," my mom shouted, waving the paper as if it were on fire. Roger froze in place. "What?" he croaked. I finally looked up. "I've given you 30 days. Everything's written there." "You're joking," my dad said, stepping forward, snatching one of the papers for himself. "This can't be real. What even is this?" "I mailed the certified letters yesterday," I said evenly. "They'll be delivered this afternoon. These are just courtesy copies." You're kicking us out?" Roger's voice cracked. "What is wrong with you?" "I'm taking my house back." My mom's hands trembled, and when she spoke again, her voice broke completely. "After everything we've done for you," she shouted, "you're really doing this now, when you're about to give birth." "No," I replied. "I'm doing this because I'm about to give birth." Roger slammed his palm against the table. The stack of papers slid off and scattered across the floor. "You're blowing this way out of proportion," he yelled. "It was one party. Just one stupid party that got too loud. Jesus, Lily, it was one party." I stood up slowly. "You took my baby shower. You turned it into a frat night. You let people I didn't even know trash my house while I was scrubbing frosting off the floor, like the damn maid we were celebrating." He shouted, "It wasn't even a big deal until you made it one." My mom rounded the table like she might physically block me. "This isn't just your house," she cried. "We've lived here for years." "Yes," I said. "Rent-free." My dad stepped forward, arms out like a mediator. "Come on," he said. "We're family. This is just emotions running high. You don't really want us out. We'll clean up. We'll apologize. We'll make it right." I stared at him. I said, "You'll gaslight me into thinking I'm overreacting like you always do. Then you'll go back to pretending this house and my life are yours to manage." My mom's face was red now. Bright red. She looked like she might explode. "You, ungrateful little brat. You think you're better than us because you started a stupid online store? You think that makes you important? We raised you. We sacrificed for you." I laughed quietly, just one breath of disbelief. "You sacrificed me for Roger every single time." My father's jaw tightened. "That's not true." I turned toward him. "When I wanted to go to college, he told me. It was a scam when Roger wanted it. You spent thousands on tutors when I worked night shifts. You told me to stop complaining." When Roger worked one summer job, you called him responsible, I paid the mortgage, I bought this house, and you still called it ours. Roger slammed his chair back. You've been waiting to do this. You've been planning this the whole time, haven't you? Yes, I said, I have. He looked at me like I'd stabbed him. You're throwing your family out over a stupid party, over a moment that's sick. It wasn't a moment. I said it was every moment for years. This just made it obvious. My mom dropped to a chair and started crying. Loud, dramatic sobs like a soap opera actress. How are we going to live? Where are we supposed to go? What will people think? That's not my problem anymore, I said. We won't. Leave, she snapped suddenly. Her eyes wild. You can't make us leave. You can't just throw your own parents onto the street. I can, I said, and I have. She looked down at the paper still in her hand. Her lips moved as she read the words again, like they might change. This isn't legal, she whispered. I reached into the drawer and pulled out a folder. Inside were copies of the deed, the notice, the certified mail receipts. I laid them gently on the table. It is, I said. I made sure Roger grabbed the folder and flung it across the room. Papers scattered like snow. You're heartless, he said. No, I said. I'm finally protecting mine. The silence returned. Not the uneasy kind from earlier. This one was heavy. I stood there surrounded by the mess they made, and for the first time in years, it wasn't mine to clean up. I want you all out by the end of the month, I said. I've arranged for a friend to help you pack if you need it. You're not serious, my father said. You'll change your mind. I looked him dead in the eyes. No, I said I won't. Then I turned and walked back to my room past the torn-up streamers, the wilting balloons, and the torn edges of the banner that had once spelled my daughter's name. They had erased me, but I was done being invisible. The first 3 days were oddly quiet, too quiet. I half expected more shouting, more door slamming, but instead the house settled into a strange limbo, where no one looked at me and I didn't try to be seen. They moved like ghosts. Roger stopped blaring music from his room. My mother stopped pretending to clean the kitchen. She never actually cleaned. My father sat on the porch for hours, holding the same cup of coffee, barely touched, but I knew the silence wouldn't last. On the 4th day, the calls began. Started with Aunt Rachel, then Uncle Ted, then my mom's friend from church, who hadn't spoken to me in 3 years, suddenly texted, "We're really concerned about you, sweetie concerned." Right? It was obvious my mother had begun her campaign. She'd been painting me as hormonal, unstable, probably not thinking straight because of the baby. She's making rash decisions, she'd said to someone. I saw the forwarded message from a cousin. We don't want to stress her out, but she needs help. They were spinning it as concern is love, as the kind of emotional pressure designed to make me feel like the bad guy. The next day, my father asked to talk. We'll start contributing, he said. Rent bills. We should have done that before. You're right, he said it. Like it was a peace offering, like it erased everything you had, years. I said, you didn't just forget, you chose not to. He nodded, then added, but think about what this looks like to the rest of the family. There was the shame card. I smiled and walked away. Day 7. Roger tried a different tactic. I talked to Coach Harrison. He said over dinner. He said if I defer a year, I might lose my scholarship. We have to move right now. I can't focus. I can't even sleep. I nodded. Tough. You don't even care, he snapped. You didn't care when I was 8 months pregnant and scrubbing frosting off the floor. He slammed his fork down and stormed off. Day 10. I got a call from my business partner. Hey, just a heads up, she said hesitantly. Someone emailed me anonymously claiming you're emotionally unstable and might not be able to handle running the business after the baby comes. They suggested I start looking at new leadership. My stomach sank, but only for a moment. I took a screenshot of the email. Cross-referenced the language with messages my mother had sent before. It matched word for word. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to my lawyer. Day 12, they stopped pretending my mom cornered me in the hallway. I know you. Think you're strong now, she hissed. But when that baby comes and you're exhausted and overwhelmed, we'll see how long this lasts. Don't come crawling back when you realize you need us. I looked her in the eye. I already realized I don't. Day 16. A sheriff's deputy dropped off a letter at the front door. My dad opened it, read it, and punched the wall. "Court filing," he muttered. They had hoped I wouldn't go through with the eviction legally, that I'd crack, that I'd give up, but the papers were filed. The hearing was scheduled. I wasn't backing down. Day 21, they tried guilt again. My mother sobbed loudly in the living room, loud enough that the neighbors probably heard. She listed everything she'd ever done for me, how she let me live at home, how she watched over me during my pregnancy, how she sacrificed her peace for me. I sat in my room, noise-canceling headphones over my ears, finishing baby registry updates. Day 25. Roger called his girlfriend over and loudly said in the kitchen, "She's crazy. She's going to ruin her kid's life without us." I walked in, looked at his girlfriend who had been at the baby shower, and said, "You helped ruin my baby shower. You might want to leave before." I wrote down the names of every underage person who had been drinking that night, and I submitted the report with your name attached. Her face went pale, and without a word, she turned and walked out. Day 28. They began packing. Suitcases started appearing like shadows in the hallway. Reluctantly, gradually. A bag here, a box there. I didn't smirk, didn't even crack a smile. I simply waited. By the 30th day, the house was already halfway empty. My dad didn't say a word when he left. He walked out the door without a single glance back. My mother stood in the foyer, arms wrapped tightly across her chest, eyes glistening with tears she refused to let fall. "You'll regret this," she murmured. "Family is forever." "I agree," I answered. "And that's why I'm building one that's truly worth keeping." Roger was the last to leave. He lingered in the doorway, a backpack slung carelessly over one shoulder. "You're lucky, you know," he said. "Now that I'm gone, you've got no one left to blame." "Then maybe I'll finally find some peace," I told him. He rolled his eyes, turned away, and the door clicked shut behind him. Silence. Not the sharp, cutting kind. Not the kind that lingers, simmering. This was different. A silence that felt calm, unburdened. I stood in the center of the living room. The space seemed bigger without their clutter. Brighter, too, like the house itself had been holding its breath and at last could release it. I walked into the nursery, opened in the closet, folded a few tiny onesies, and laid a soft pink blanket neatly in the crib. Outside, the wind drifted gently through the trees. I sat down, one hand resting on my belly. For the very first time in my life, I felt genuinely safe. Not because anyone else made it that way, but because I had created it myself. 4 years have passed. Just last month, my daughter began preschool. She strapped on a little purple backpack and proudly announced she was going to teach her classmates how to draw clouds. She's kind, curious, and determined. She reminds me of myself, only stronger. The business is thriving. I never once had to close, not even during the draining newborn stage. I've hired 2 more employees, and last year we finally crossed the 6-figure line. These days, I no longer work endless hours. I don't grind myself down the way I once did. Now, I finally have space just to live. As for my family, we haven't spoken since the day they walked out. I never reached for them, and they never tried to reach me either. Still, relatives gossip. At weddings, at funerals, whispers always find their way back. From what I've heard, Roger dropped out after his first year. Turns out it's tough to keep up when no one is there to pick up the pieces for you. My parents moved in with one of my uncles, but that arrangement collapsed quickly. He kicked them out after only 6 months, unpaid bills, and my mother, apparently, was unbearable to live with. They're not doing well. And no, I don't feel proud of that, but I don't feel guilty either. I gave them chance after chance. All I ever asked for was the bare minimum. And when they refused to give even that, I finally stopped giving everything. Some claim family is unconditional, but to me, respect is what should be. So that's my update. Do you think I made the right choice? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.